Alrighty, so back in the saddle again. Having some difficulty with the internet tonight. I don't know why. It literally froze up for several minutes trying to get the check on things I just finished doing. So I don't know what's going on there. Sengoku. Yeah, so I have been trying to track down what one would call a puzzle with as much as I was frustrated at the end of yesterday trying to figure out what to call a puzzle with a binary ending, I entered that and I get puzzles with ones and zeros, which is not useful. With the idea of doing this audio game where the player gets a setup, a choice, a response to those two choices on the two different audio channels, and then a return to the setup narrative. I don't know how to frame that. I feel like I'm wording it well enough for people to get it. But every time I try to talk to somebody about it, even giving examples and parallel examples, nobody seems to get what I'm talking about. And Google can't find anything like that. It gives me always the wrong results. And I think the keto diet makes me have a shorter fuse than I would normally do. So I nearly had to slam my laptop closed last night and just walk away. It took me like 2 hours to get to the point where I wasn't pissed off anymore at trying to have a conversation with some people. And they were trying to be helpful. I get it. Some of them were trying to be helpful. Some of them were just being jerks. But I lost my fuse way too fast. And so I do think I have a slightly shorter fuse for some of that right now. But I still have not been able to find anything. I thought just for a brief moment that I had a possibility. In computer programming, there's oftentimes a term used for projects that have a true or not true or true false mechanism for resolving. And it's called Boolean. I believe, Boolean. Boolean. And so I'm like, oh, cool. This is a dual choice mechanism in a program, an executable program. I'm like, that's what we need to be looking at. Turns out everything that uses Boolean is a big, complex, multi-faceted puzzle that is solved by asking essentially yes or no or true or false questions. I was like, I don't want the solution to be reached with true or false narratives. I want So I'm starting to feel like maybe there isn't anything anywhere in existence that does this, which is absurd to me. It can't be that we've never figured anything out like this. But I'm just going to run with that as the operative narrative on this because I'm not finding anything. And not only am I not finding anything, I'm not finding anything that suggests there's a better way to ask the question to get a result. I'm tripping over the fact that there just doesn't seem to be a better way to ask the question. I'm never going to find a name for this type of puzzle because I guess nobody's bothered to group these types of puzzles together. So I'm going to have to fabricate a list or a series of ideas to work for this format. I guess I should be happy that I'm seeming to break new ground on this, I'm sure somebody at some point will say, oh, this is just a ripoff of this. And then I'll have to go find that somebody else has figured this all out already. But right now, I've put 3 days into trying to find out how to look up more information about, I guess, Boolean resolution puzzles. And I can't find anything. So what I'm going to end up doing, and it looks like there's not a lot of specific types of puzzles. That list of 5 that I came up with last night on further examination, none of them work for what I was doing. I should be able to do the knight and knave style puzzle on occasion. We have the always lying, always telling the truth kind of puzzle. And you ask the question and they forward an answer, and based off of the logic of that puzzle, you should be able to figure out which of the 2 paths is the right path to take. I can use that one sort of. I can do a trivia question where the end result is a right or wrong answer, and I could probably do a true or false style question. But I'm actually kind of looking to see if I can find some other puzzles. There are a few of those types of puzzles out there that I got a mosquito in my ear the other night that's driving me nuts. Mosquito bite inside the ear canal. That's always great. But I found a potential path for constructing puzzles that may work. The puzzle is, it's not a puzzle. It's some of the types of puzzles that exist out there are like math puzzles, where you have like a sequence of numbers that don't make a lot of sense, except that they form a pattern. And then the very next piece to slot into that pattern is left blank, and you have the choice of a few things that could fit into that slot. Now, it's up to the person building that puzzle to decide how many choices you give them to choose from. So you could give them 3 or 5 choices to fit into that last slot, or you can give them 2. So if I can do a series of those types of puzzles where instead of using numbers or geometric shapes, do a puzzle where you're establishing some form of pattern and expecting the player to solve that pattern with a missing piece. Those types of puzzles I can do some. I can do some with mathematics. There are a couple out there like what are the orders of operation? So they give you a long string of poorly, I guess we can't call it worded math, but poorly mathematically grammar-based constructs that don't have the parentheses they need to delineate which order goes first. And so you have to know, addition and subtraction go first, and out of those, which one goes first. And then you multiply and divide next. And parentheses delineate a section goes before it combines with the rest of the equation. So there are puzzles out there that if you do them in the wrong order, you get one answer. If you do them in the right order, you get a different type of answer. And so setting up an order of operations style puzzle, so mathematical puzzles, pattern puzzles, I'm looking through a few other types of puzzles that I can potentially use, and then I'll build a small list of some simple puzzles that I can use, and then structure a narrative around them so that instead of saying like, you're right or you're wrong, they're like, there's a story-based consequence to not having the right result. And my goal eventually was to do like a 5 puzzle narrative. And if you can get 3 of the puzzles right, you are doing better than 50%, so you win. So at that point, it's sort of like the narrative is of a treasure hunt or something like that, where you're collecting things. And in order to be like at least partly victorious, you have to get 3 out of 5 right. And that's part of the narrative. It's like a temple raider. If you're Indiana Jones and you go into a temple and there are some there are some treasures that are locked behind certain devices. And in order to get into and take the devices from the temple, you have to solve a puzzle. And if you fail a puzzle, you don't get that particular item. When you get out of there, you get to a new location. At the end of the story, it's a summary of how many you've gotten. And if you've got 0 to 2, you are not considered to have been successful on your mission. If you've got 3 to 5 out of your mission, you have succeeded. And I will have, again, that split that I can do a different ending for either of those options. So that's sort of where I'm at right now. I'm looking through some types of puzzles to see if I can find a few other kinds of puzzles that I might be able to use. Most of them are not binary by design, but can be bent to become binary, which is probably what I'm going to end up having to do. And I've got a big old book of potential puzzles to work with. So I'm going to be digging through that right now. I'm sort of done chasing down things on the internet right now because I'm not getting any results. And I'm just seeming to confuse other people and frustrate myself. So I'm just going to run with the idea that nobody's done this before until proven otherwise. And so I will have to build a repertoire. Oh, wow. Repertoire. There we go. Of puzzles that can be adapted to this style of format and make some simple designs of reskins of these types of puzzles that I can do so that I can have, say, like a list of 10 to 15 different style puzzles that I can cycle through sets of them, and it'll never feel like you're repeating the same puzzle again. So that's sort of the idea right now for the puzzle game. The next thing on the list for tonight is the music making, which is, I think I'm just going to take 2 off of page 13 in my music book. I Must Have That Man. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it looks like 20, 30 bars of music. And I only need probably about 4 to 6 bars off of that song that I can remix in a new order and just sort of. And the thing I like about it is the notes are very simple single notes. They're not super complex. There's not a lot of sharps and flats and special notations or anything I need to pay attention to. And it gives me enough wiggle room to grab chunks out of, assemble them like Legos into a new form and see what I can do with it. And then I have this other song that's called Dig-a-Dig-a-Doo. And it starts out as Zulu man is feeling blue. Hear his heart beat a little tat-tat-too. Dig-a-dig-a-doo. Yeah, that's. I think that borders on inappropriate, but okay. But again, the tune is pretty simple. It has a very repetitive first 4 bars. It gets a little more complicated as you get into it, but I want to see if I can play with that a little bit and just adjust the tones. Instead of using single notes, I may use chords, may switch it from a major to a minor, or the other way around. I can't tell what it is right now. And see what I can make out of it and juggle the pieces around. Speed up or slow down the tempo, do an arpeggio or a split chord for a few of the pieces, and potentially take a few of the bars from the middle and combine them with some of the bars from the beginning, and just see what I can make out of this. And so I've got the 2 songs I think I'm going to work with here, the Dig-a-Dig-a-Doo and I Must Have That Man. Words by Dorothy Fields, music by Jim McHugh. And I think, yeah, they were both from 1928. Copyright renewed in 1956. And I mean, that's all the information I have on them. I'm just going to, I mean, I'll be ripping and remixing them to a degree anyway, so it doesn't really have that big an impact. I'm not going to be anywhere near a copyrightable violation on something like that. And I will be putting more of a contemporary backbeat and percussion section to it. I might change these pieces to, well, let's see. I'm not sure yet. I feel like I may end up doing a simplified music and a changed melody. I'll have to figure out what makes the most sense. And like I said, if I take an individual note and change it from like an F to an F chord instead of a note, then what you oftentimes see is, especially with like piano pieces, is you'll have a chord with this hand, and then you play one of the notes in the chord, not necessarily the first or the key note on that chord, with the other hand. And being able to change the note here to one of the notes in that chord, while this one maybe does a split chord or an arpeggio, would be such a drastic change to a piece like these, which are very, very simple one-note pieces, that I feel like it's not going to feel like it's the same song. So that's sort of part of what I want to try to play with. Is I don't have a lot of experience in making music from scratch. I'm reasonably decent at reproducing things I've heard, but I've never tried to make something from scratch like this before, and I'm kind of curious to see what I can do. I think I mentioned the first night when we were planning some of this that it's going to be a little difficult. I think this is the computer. This one right here is the one that has the audio editing stuff on it. So this one right here on my side, it doesn't have any of that. I could load it on there, but I feel like it makes almost just as much sense to play with the audio on this computer and set up this one for next time I do a video on here, like tomorrow or whatever, for how far I've gotten with some of the projects. So I may be changing the position of camera and microphone tomorrow. I don't know. I can't decide yet. I know I have to do the videos for the rest of the week, the daytime videos, which would be, I have to watch a movie, and I have to play a board game, and review each of those, and then do the creative prompts for each. So I have 4 more for that, and then I've got the night videos. So today is Tuesday. That would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So 4 more videos in the evenings that may be done through there. It's from a different angle. So that's sort of where I'm at right now. I know it seems like an early summary of the video. I don't have a lot more to play with right now. I picked my 2 songs out. I need to see if I can figure out how to get them into the piano roll, because I think that's the thing I'm going to be struggling with. Like, I'm not good at reading music. I'm good at mimicking what I hear, but I'm not very good at reading music. And I'm not sure enough about some of this. Like, some of the notations on some of these pieces are not clear to me. And I mean, I took music in high school, and I took a music theory class or 2, but some of it's just not sticking. Like, I didn't have the chance to really apply it in a meaningful way, and so I didn't really absorb it. But so like I'm not sure what I need to pay attention to. Like, why is there a B7 above one of the notes, and why is there an EM? I don't know. And some of it, like, I don't understand what that is and why they're doing it. So I'll have to do a little bit of research on that, and I got to figure out how I can get the piano roll in Linux LMMS to take those notes down. How to lay down a beat track right next to it and get them to play together. So I'm going to have to learn a little bit about LMMS and how to use it over the next couple days, and then see if I can install these songs into it and tweak them, change them up a little bit. The method I'm going to have to use for the puzzles is going to be any visual elements. I'm probably going to try to minimize the visual elements on the audio puzzles. Like, I can do some of it. I could probably do a few simple parts. But like I said, the first time I was contemplating the audio puzzles is because you're going to have 2 tracks of sound, but only one video, the video has to work for both halves of the track. And that doesn't always make a lot of sense in a story element if the choice has any consequence. But also, I like the idea of this being just an audio game so that I could do it through something like a podcast or a downloadable music website. And I also like the possibility of making this a game that's good for visually impaired people to be able to play a video game that's audio play. So I think what I'm probably going to end up doing for that is figure out the bare minimum of the visual elements that I'm going to need and record a video with that, put it in my editor, and just excise the audio track. And then use something like Audacity, which I have, and use that to create a left audio channel sound and a right audio channel sound, and compile those together into a single soundtrack that can be clipped onto my editor as a sound file for the video that I create with it. And I'm not sure how well that works. I think you can create a left or a right audio track separately in Audacity. Again, it's going to be one of those things I'm going to have to learn on the fly as I try to apply it. But that's pretty much how these two are going to work. They're both very simple experiments in sound and audio. I hope they're as easy as they seem to be. There's a possibility that I might be underthinking it, and there will be a hitch that slows me down somewhere along the way. But I will see what I can figure out working on them. If either of these work out, I will probably be doing a lot more of this sort of tinkering. I will probably take a lot more music from a different source. I don't think all the ones in this book are necessarily of use to me. But, I mean, what do we got? In this one book, we have 650 songs that I can tear apart and remix. I got a lot of resource there, and I've got a couple other books like this, and some of them are like old 1900 piano music books for playing at family gatherings. As you know, once upon a time, people used to do that, and they're all songs that'll be in the open. They're copyright free at that point. They're old enough that all copyrights would have lapsed on those. And then I think I have a book or two of Irish folk music which is, a couple centuries old and played regularly at gatherings. So that's, relatively free of any worry of copyright on those. And like I said, what I'm doing with those is I'm grabbing, 4 bars out of 30 in many cases and just mixing them up a little bit, and then making a variation in some of them. So I might take 4 bars from different places in a piece, put them together until they form a nice path, put a point at the end of that path which lets it loop back around, and do, say, 4 loops of that 4-bar pattern with a variant at the end of it of the end note, so that instead of setting it up for another loop, it sets it up for maybe just a 4-chord slam for like a chorus tone before cycling back around through looping the main 4 bars that I use. And again, if I split notes up, individual notes from like an F note to an F chord, arpeggio or split chord those, slow the tempo, speed the tempo. I could probably get 5 or 6 different songs from any one song. So I've got a lot of material I can play with. And I think it's useful for me to see a constructed Lego. A bar of music is something that already works that I can snap together with another bar that already works and just see how they play with each other. And that's much easier than me trying to figure out note by note a whole song from scratch without any kind of guide or template to work with. Now, I'm not sure what kind of adventure I want to. Again, I keep jumping back and forth. I'm trying to figure out what kind of adventure story I want to make for my first set of audio puzzles. I might just do I still want to go back towards the 5 puzzles. Did you get 3 out of 5? If so, you win. But by the same token, it might just be easier to, did you get all 3 of 3? Or 2 out of 3? I could do 2 out of 3. Doing a 3 puzzle story, because it's intro story bit, which could be 2 to 3 minutes. You make your choice. Your answer comes for about 2 to 3 minutes. No, whether or not your answer works and the consequences of your answer is probably about 1 to 2 minutes at most. So you've got about 5 minutes for the first part, and then a narrative bit for 1 to 2 minutes, followed by 1 to 2 minutes of the resolution of that choice. So that's 4. So we're at 9. 11, 13 to 15 minutes for a video is a decent length of time. So a 3 puzzle video audio puzzle should run about 10 to 15 minutes max, and that's a good enough time frame. I don't think I need to build one big giant adventure yet, though eventually that could be fun to do, like a nice half-hour puzzle adventure for somebody. Ooh, could we do a feature-length, movie-length puzzle story game? That would be interesting. I think that's a long ways off for me, though. I have to see how far I can get with the structure of stacking puzzles and narrative like this. I think in a longer format, one of the issues you're going to encounter is an issue with realizing that like the choices you make have very little consequence on the flow of the story. If you do something with, say, a classic story structure where you have the lead up, probably going to be more like 10 to 15 minutes of story narrative before your first big puzzle. A movie length version of something like this is probably going to have 12 to 15 puzzles in it. And if you do 12 to 15 puzzles and the choice gets you a short track telling you whether or not you succeeded or not with that particular event, but then to go back to the rest of the flow of the narrative, it's going to be much more apparent that 12 to 15 things that you had choices on don't change the story at all. The story continues to flow the same way. The only difference it's going to make is at the end of the story, whether or not you met the qualifications for winning. Although it's possible that I could bring back a story element that was affected earlier on in a puzzle. Like if you have a puzzle that it'll open one of two doors depending on how you set it, and you pull the lever and I make two tracks. One gives you access to a dagger that you can throw, and the other gives you access to a two-handed axe. And then later in the story, you're confronting a villain, and if you confront this villain and you have the axe, you have to get in close to fight. And at some other point in the story, there's an element that provides what the villain has to oppose your weapon with. So it's possible that you could end up having to get close and they'll have a gun and they'll be able to defeat you at the climax of the story. But if you have a ranged weapon. So I might be able to do something like that for a feature-length story. So it'll come to a point in the story where you say, if you have this, go left. If you have that, go to the right speaker. That would take some very tricky scheduling and planning to get that to work out right. All right, so those are the thoughts of where I am right now. I am probably going to hop out of here, do a little looking through the puzzle books and whatnot for probably another 15 minutes. And then I will hop over. I will finish episode 4 of Russian Doll tonight. I didn't realize they were half-an-hour episodes, so I'm plowing through those pretty quick. I'll be halfway through the series by the end of the night. I'm hoping to have something to show off tomorrow for these 2 projects. Or at least one of them. I'm hoping I have a demo model for the audio game, because quite frankly, I got so frustrated trying to get people to understand what I was talking about with that I want to be able to show somebody and say, like, see, this is what I was talking about. I'm not crazy. I'm not unable to communicate this concept. You just weren't understanding what I was talking about. And it sucks that Boolean didn't return any more results than I wanted. But I should be able to pull off a variance on the Knight and Knave style puzzle, which is what they call the puzzles. You come to a split in the road. One man lies, one man tells the truth. You have to ask one of them, and based off of the answer he gives you, you know which one leads to death and which one leads to victory. Like, that's possible. I might even be able to pull off. I'm not a big fan of the Monty Hall problem one, because that one's set up to look like there are 3 options, but there are actually really only 2 it corners you into. The problem I have with the Monty Hall and its relative puzzles are their probability puzzles. So say you have the 3 doors and you pick one door, they open the third door and show that that's what you don't want. So I'm setting this up wrong. 3 doors. 2 of them have, say, a bomb behind them, and one of them has $1 million. You are picking one door without opening it. They open one of the other 2 doors and show there's a bomb behind it. So now you're at a point where, do you stick with the door you picked or do you switch? Which one's likely to have the money? Statistically speaking, laws of probability state your odds are best to switch from the one you picked. But that's better odds. There's still a percentage chance. There's still some percentage of chance that what you pick will end up being the bomb anyway. And I don't want to construct something like that for the audio puzzles for the specific reason that you want a determined answer to happen on a given channel. You want the person to be able to solve the puzzle to get a specific result. You don't want it to be a gamble. Now that's based off of how the Monty Hall problem is built. If I construct it such that the choice is, do you switch or not switch? I can construct an on-paper script model of which door is which, and then it really is a gamble for the player. But I find that less satisfying as a game designer to make something, is it heads or tails? And then I flip a coin and then you have to guess. Like that's not a fun game element to me. A game should be something you can win, not luck out on. But then I'm reminded that people like to watch people unwrap unknown presents or open packages of unknown items, or there's a sort of vicarious enjoyment out of the gamble. Some people like to watch people play video poker or something like that, and it's like they like to see a streak of luck. So maybe there's an element of that. I don't know. It's not something that's ever appealed to me enough that I would pursue that, but maybe it's something I will do a test example of and ask people to tell me if they like it or not. All right, I'm getting to the point where I'm done for tonight, unless there are any thoughts or questions. If not, I will see you tomorrow. Thank you and take care. Take care and good night, I think is the yeah, I'm a little all over the place tonight. See you tomorrow.